Ever wanted a pair of really cool custom shoes, but maybe you don't feel like shelling out a few $100s for them? Why not customize a pair yourself? Maybe you don't consider yourself a skilled artist. Well, what if I told you there's a method you can use to help you get the job done without relying on any artistic skills? Today I'll be showing you how to customize those Air Force 1s you've been wanting, even if you suck at art. The important thing about this video are the techniques I'll be demonstrating that can be used for whatever design you come up with for your own project. Customizing shoes is something I've experimented with off and on for a few years now, and I've learned a lot. I've painted shoes in different themes like Sailor Moon, Yu Yu Hakusho, Mega Man X, and more recently, I customized a pair of Nikes for a 1-year-old in the theme of Winnie the Pooh. But the pair of shoes I'm most proud of has to be my Super Mario 3 themed Nikes. I spent about 40 to 50 hours making these, but that amount of work put in only added to the weight of the hard lesson I had to learn just after one day of wearing them. More on that later. In this box is a pair of Air Force 1s I just finished painting. But you gotta wait till the end of the video. Trust me, it's worth it. For me. For this pair of Air Force 1s, I went with a simple design of just putting on my favorite characters from the GHIBLI studios onto each side of the shoe. To get started, you'll need to print out some images of the characters you want on each side of the shoe in the correct size. What I normally do is I'll put 3 of the same image onto a Word document in different sizes. That way when it prints out, I just choose the best one that fits the shoe. For these shoes, I'll be adding Totoro, No Face, Calcifer, and Kiki. To be able to trace every line of the image onto the shoes, we're going to start with cutting out each outline of the characters. As you see, this is where I'll be painting the characters. You're going to need some acetone to prep the shoe. This is very important because it's the best way to get the glazed layer of protection off of the leather. If you don't do this, the paint won't stick. Just wipe the areas you're painting. No need to wipe the whole shoe down. Next, we're going to use painter's tape to hold down the images to the shoes. We're going to be tracing the outline of each image using a pencil. Now the next step is the most crucial one, prepping the shoe. This is where we sand down the areas we're painting on. You want to do this to get past the layer of smooth glaze and white leather on the shoe. We need a distressed surface for the paint to have something to grab onto. I'm using some sanding bits with my Dremel tool on each Nike swoosh and inside of the outline of each character. You can also use sandpaper starting with a low grit and work your way up to a higher grit, but using a mini sander or a Dremel tool will save you a ton of time. As you see, we're getting past the white layer of some areas. That's okay. We'll be painting over that, and that's what you want to see. In fact, looking back, I probably should have done more sanding, but this isn't an area that's going to be creased by wearing the shoe, so it's alright. Speaking of which, remember those Mario 3 Nikes I did? Well, here's why I'm telling you from personal experience that it is crucial to do a good prep of the shoes before you paint. After 40 to 50 hours on these shoes, I wore them one time, and the paint just started to flake and peel off. Of course, it started flaking off at the toe area because that's where it creases as you walk. But the truth is, I didn't spend much time prepping. I got too excited and I wanted to just get to the design. And now I just have a pair of display-only Nikes to show for it. Moving on, after all that sanding, I like to go over the stitches with a fine hair trimmer to get any frayed fibers. Then we're going to clean the shoes again with acetone. Now we'll start masking off the areas of the shoes we won't be painting on, because we're going to be spraying these with adhesion promoter. Now, this is kinda optional. I've seen professionals use this, but I've also heard people say it's not that important, but I have a can, so I'm gonna use it. I'll be spraying these with 3 coats of adhesion promoter. This is supposed to help the paint stick to the shoe. After it's dry, remove the masking. Now we're gonna retrace each character back onto the shoe. Hey, I said you wouldn't need art skills. I never said it wouldn't be tedious. Next, you're gonna cut out one section or one detail at a time and place the image back onto the shoe. Then trace over that area that you just cut out. Make sure you're lining up the parts of the image correctly over what you traced. See, we now have Totoro's belly, and we didn't even have to rely on freehanding it. You're going to repeat this until the full image is on the shoe. You're going to cut out all details like cutting out the eyes, the nose, the mouth. Using an X-Acto knife is perfect for this. Some details like the line of the whiskers or tuft of fur, you can draw directly if you're confident enough. I'll even cut out and trace the sections of shadow of the image so I know where to add darker shades of paint. This can feel complicated, but just take your time, go one detail at a time, be patient, and you'll get it. After you got all the images traced onto the shoes, you're ready for the fun part, painting. The paint to use is called Angelus Leather Paint. This is basically the industry standard of custom shoes. You can get them on their website or on Amazon. I also use some wax or plastic cups with lids to help keep the paint from drying out. For very fine lines and small areas, I like to use toothpicks to paint with. I also have a heat gun to speed up the process between coats, but you don't need it if you're willing to wait for each coat to dry. For paintbrushes, I just get the cheap $5 to $10 packs because I don't clean them very well and they get gross after a couple shoes, so I end up throwing them away. The first color we're going to do is Totoro's gray fur, using white with a drop of black. It's a little too dark, so I added a little bit more white. From here on, it's just like coloring in a coloring book. Stay within the lines and don't glob it on. Use thin, light coats. Each color will need about 4 coats to show evenly, and this is what the first coat looks like. Now you see there's a section uncolored on the left side. That's where I traced out the shadow from the original image. When doing characters in a design like this, you'll notice that the shadow of any color is just the darker shade of that color. Between each coat, I hit it with the heat gun so I can get back on and paint the next coat quickly. Don't throw away those cups of paint yet because you're going to need them for touch-ups later. Next, we'll do the shadow on his fur. Remember, it's just a darker shade of gray, so just add a little more black into your white. It's always handy to have the original image on a phone or print it out so you can look back on it to help you. As you can see, I'm now adding some finer detail I missed with my tracing. I'm using a toothpick to add some jagged edges onto the shadow to give off the appearance of fur. Now we'll do his belly. Before we add color, it's a good idea to go over the dark sanded areas with white first. That way, we won't have to do multiple coats to get an even spread. Since it's lighter, the colors are more transparent. While I'm at it, I might as well use the white on Totoro's eyes. I'm also going to use the white to clean up some areas I messed up on. Here, I made his ears too thick, so I'm covering the edges with some white. This was kind of tricky to get the right color for his belly. It's kind of an off-white yellow, so I just went with white with a tiny bit of yellow paint. It's a little tricky not to touch the gray marks on his belly, so that's why I have my original gray color I mixed for touch-ups when I'm done. 4 coats later, and our boy has a belly. For the shadow of the belly, I'm mixing white with a couple drops of yellow, pink, and brown. After the shadow, I went back over the gray marks to clean up any messes. I'll move on to the black lines next. For fine lines, I like to shave down my toothpicks with an X-Acto knife, but this is optional. I'm going to carefully paint over all the black lines of the image. His outline, whiskers, nose, eyes, mouth. We're just retracing our original pencil marks. Now, I always save the white dots on the eyes for last. I just love how it brings the image to life, with just a simple white dot. And finally, we have our finished Totoro. Next, I started on no face with black. This image is a lot easier since it's very basic in shapes and colors. Now I'm covering the dark sanded areas with white, and then fixing any mistakes I made with black. After several coats of white, I move on to the light purple of the marks on his face. I'm mixing lilac with a drop of purple together. Next, I want to do the shadow of his mask, so I'm just adding a tiny bit of black with white. For the shadow on his purple marks, I'm gonna just add more purple onto my original mix. And there's no face. He's not completely done yet. I'll be adding a cool technique later, but we need to finish the rest of the shoe first. Okay, so then I moved on to Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle. This image was a little tricky because he has more of a gradient from his center to the outer edge. But first, we need to start with white and cover up those dark sanded areas. Now, I did start with yellow, thinking that it'll be easy to just darken the outer area with orange, but this was a mistake. I quickly learned that I should have started with the darker orange color first, then work in the yellow. See here, it just looks like a ketchup and mustard mess. Now that we have the image covered in orange, I need to go over the black lines with paint because I'm starting to lose sight of where the pencil was traced onto the image. After that, I started lightly brushing on the yellow from the center out. As you can see, this is way better. I went back and forth with these two colors until I was satisfied with the image, adding harder touches of yellow for highlights with my toothpick. I noticed from the original image he kinda has a dark outline, so I'm going to use plain orange for that. I also added some little flames rising above Calcifer to give more motion to the image, but consider it optional. After I finished both images on one shoe, I then go over it with a Q-tip dipped in acetone to clean up all the messes of any areas I want to take away. I also use white paint in some cases. Next, I worked on our final image, Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service. As per usual, I went over the dark sanded areas with white first. Starting with the first color, I went with a light flesh tone, but I wasn't happy with it. It was a bit too orange, so I had to mix another batch. For some reason, I didn't film this part, but I mixed a tiny bit of pink, yellow, in with white. For some reason, light flesh color is really hard for me to get just right. After 4 coats of that, I moved on to the shadow by just adding a drop of brown into my original mix. Next, I did the black lines on her face. I had a little trouble with her nose, so I used the flesh-colored paint again to cover up so I could try again. Kiki's hair is made of 2 colors, black and dark brown. So I'm adding just a couple drops of black with brown and working that in. After about 4 coats of each color on her hair, I moved on to her signature red hair ribbon. I'm using fire red with a touch of white for the lighter part. And for the shadow, I'm going with the fire red with a couple drops of brown. For her blush, I'm going with straight pink, lightly brushed on. Her dress is a dark gray, so I'm just mixing black and white together. Finally, I fill in all the black lines with a toothpick. And now for my favorite part, the white dots on the eyes. Now she's alive. Cute. Alright, so next we're going to work on the Nike swoosh. For the shoe with Totoro and Calcifer, I'm going to go with a leaf green by mixing green and a little bit of white. About 5 coats later, it's time to do some cleanup with acetone and Q-tips. For the swoosh on No Face and Kiki's shoe, I want to go with a purple, but matching the same tone as the green swoosh on the other shoe. So I'm mixing lilac and purple together until it's just right. Okay, so remember when I said I wasn't done with No Face? Well, here's a cool option you can do. I want to make him a bit transparent like he is in the movie. So I'm going to super lightly brush on, or pat on, the corresponding colors behind him. So we add white on the top and bottom, and the same purple from the swoosh for the middle area. You can see I went a little too hard, so I added more black from the center and moving out. Remember to use just a tiny bit of paint on your brush. Now it's cleanup time. Remember to use acetone and a Q-tip, and white paint over the areas you can't reach with the Q-tip. Okay, now for the finisher. What, did you think we were done with this glossy mess? No way. We want clean, matte finish. This is Angela's Matte 4 Coat. It is king. It'll make your paint look like it came from the factory. Matte and so fresh looking. Pour a small amount in a cup and use a soft, clean brush. Lightly go over the painted areas. A little goes a long way, and you don't need to go over any unpainted areas. Make sure there's no globs left and that you have a smooth finish. This stuff will dry pretty quickly, so you don't want to be brushing when it starts to harden. So make sure you cover it all before it starts to dry. Blast it with a heat gun or wait till it dries and then move on to your second coat. You only need about 2 or 3 coats. As you can see, what once was glossy and kinda cheap looking now has a premium matte finish. Congratulations, you're done. So what do you guys think? Want to try customizing a pair of shoes yourself? If you're still not confident in your artistic skills, remember it takes time, patience. If you use the tracing method I used, it makes it a lot easier. There is no way I could do this by freehanding it myself. But let me know down in the comments if you've ever customized a pair of shoes before. Do you have any tips or tricks you could share? What design would you like to see on a pair of shoes? And as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day, guys. Go out there and make something.